6:30.
Shh, be quiet. Everybody be quiet. Okay.
Hey!
I'm all high.
We are live.
Live alert, live alert, live alert.
All right. We have a special guest tonight, so I think we should officially start the episode. Are we all ready? David's ready. I don't know where my co-host here is.
He's getting like a little baby, David.
Oh, look at how responsible he is wearing a mask.
It has to do with my...
Uh-oh. Okay. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Unimaginary Friendcast, episode 253. This is a conversation with your socially distanced best friends. We are your best friends.
I am Nathan Vaughn Edmondson.
I'm Erin Marie Betty Davis Jr.
And I'm DavidMonster.com.
Welcome, guys. So tonight we're really excited. We have a very special guest joining us live in just a few short minutes. We'll be welcoming author and cultural journalist Jane Borden on our show. She's going to talk about cults, which you all know is a Friendcast favorite topic to go down. So Jane recently had an article in Vanity Fair called "What Is It About California and Cults?" She did a ton of research for that piece and apparently has a lot more to say on it. So we are very excited to have her to talk about that. And David, I know he loves being called out for being an ex-Scientologist, but for any new listeners, he was in Scientology for a few too many years. Hey. So I know David definitely has some questions for her, and we're really excited and honored to have her as our first live stream guest.
I like that David was in Scientology for too many years. Like, there was a number you could have done, David, but then you exceeded it.
It's embarrassing. I feel shame. No, seriously, it's embarrassing for sure. But we're going to discuss that as part of this piece. We're going to discuss all of that because there's something else going on that is akin to that. But go ahead.
But first, we have breaking news.
No, I'll go first.
I think Nathan has to go first.
So I took my first COVID test today.
Uh-oh.
How do you?
It came back negative.
Yay!
Really? Because weren't you Frenching with Donald Trump this weekend? Sorry, go ahead.
No, who cares? You needed a break from the Frenching. That's why I took that car ride.
What was the experience like?
So it cost $75 to do a rapid test.
Wow.
Which was kind of expensive, I thought. But
yeah.
Hey, no, it was great. They just took a swab, like a cotton swab, and stuck it up your nose and twiddled it around, then did the other side as well. So that wasn't pleasant. It was not pleasant.
Okay.
But yeah, within, I would say, a half hour later, I had results. Yeah, so good news. I had a little bit of a cold that hit me out of nowhere, and I was like, well, what? Okay, you just can't have a cold anymore. You have any problem, you might have COVID. It's terrible.
Yeah, so. And if you have a job, people don't want you at work.
Yeah, so I had to take today off.
Oh, that's cool. That's a plus.
Yeah, I guess I slept in most of the morning. That was nice.
Nice.
David, do you want to give your news next?
All right. Something I found out. I was going to talk about how Whole Foods and Sprouts are total bullshit, but I'm going to save that because that's a very important topic. Okay. I'm going to save that for something more whimsical and less important. I found out 100% that the police are not legally or constitutionally obligated to protect us in any way. They are not obligated to enforce restraining orders, and they have no legal job description whatsoever. And not only that, the only way that and not only that, the police unions want to keep it that way. They don't want them to have a legal job description. And the only way they can be held responsible for your safety is if this is the only way. You guys ready?
Ready.
Is if you as victims say, police officer, I need help. And then you need to state the specific reason why there is a person with a gun or there's a person with a knife. You have to say the specific reason. And there has to be a third party witnessing all this. And then the police officer has to say to you, I will help you, and then state the specific incident. If you just say I need help and the police officer says I will help you, that's not good enough.
Where did
That's
you?
the only. Okay, I heard it on a podcast, and then I did research. There's tons of precedent. It goes up to the Supreme Court time and time again. That's why they had to find that the cops were totally what's the word, innocent in the Breonna Taylor, because they have no obligation to protect her, and they said that they thought she was dangerous because a woman asleep is a very scary thing. Because they said that, oh, we saw that she had brown skin, so we could shoot her, and the judge was obviously like, oh, that's very scary. No, but there is no, time and time again, the police are. That's why there's precedent after precedent. The police are not bound by the same laws that we are. The police are not part of our community, and they are not bound by our laws, and they have no legal job description whatsoever.
I'm not going to disagree with you. There's a lot about that I don't know, but I can say not all police aren't there to serve the community. There are good police officers.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to discount that by giving a blanket statement, but I'm sure there's a good deal of truth in what you're saying.
No, yeah. The only thing that binds them is because police officers were asked, like, what is your job description? And they would give what their own police department has said, but that's not a legally binding thing. When they say we're here to protect, there's no legal precedent that binds them to that or constitutional precedent whatsoever. We should do a topic on this, because that is why time and time again, and when you mix racism in with that, they're like, we could do whatever we want. Because they can, like, legally, when they go to court, that's why police officers keep getting off, is because there's nothing to bind them. There's no law that's a precedent to bind them to any kind of obligation.
Maybe we should do a topic about that.
And defunding is a whole different thing. Like, we should be like, either you have a legal job description or we defund you, because what are you there for? Because what I said is the truth. That's the only thing that has ever bound any cop in a court of law, is if the specifics, a verbal contract has to be witnessed by a third party.
Sounds
but anyway.
good. Yeah, let's do a topic on it. We can explore it further.
Cool. So I hate to give another kind of heavy
of
news, but it's something.
Go, bitch, go.
I have something I need to get off my chest, and I know we promised not to do more political episodes, so this is my personal news. This is just a public service announcement to all of my fellow liberal-minded friends. And I say that because if you're liberal-minded, it doesn't mean you're a Democrat. It could mean that you're part of the Green Party, or you're something completely different, or you don't associate with any party. But we have similar ideals in how we want the world to be and how we want our country to be run. I keep seeing people posting things about that make it's like why Joe Biden is a monster. Like he didn't do this, or he did this. And they're not my Republican Trump loving friends. They're my liberal minded friends. And it's really gotten me. I've been wondering about that. And I've had some conversations with people recently, and this is part of my public service announcement. So Joe Biden is, well, let's be honest, he's not exciting. He's certainly not perfect. I don't think he's anyone's first choice at this point, but he is the only candidate that has a viable chance of beating Trump that's going up in this election. I will admit that I voted for Bernie, so I kind of fall at that end of the spectrum, but I'm going to vote for Joe Biden because this is what I think is the most responsible thing to do right now, because what we have to go up against is Donald Trump. And I don't need to say anything more about Donald Trump. We know about Donald Trump, all the stuff. So I'm not going to go into that. But I don't know what it's going to prove to try to convince all of your liberal-minded friends that Joe Biden is a monster at this point. We have less than 30 days till we vote. Are you trying to get people to not vote? Are you trying to get people to vote third party? Because that's part of this public service announcement. Now is not the time for third party. I am 100% on board with reforming the party system. We need to have more than 2 parties. The Democrats do not represent most of the things that I want to see, especially the current Democratic Party. They piss me off. They do terrible things. Yes. But the alternative is Trump. The alternative is Trump. The alternative is Trump. We can't be convincing people that share our ideals to vote third party or to vote not vote or to not vote. That's the worst thing that could come out of these posts. Joe Biden's a monster, don't vote. Joe Biden's a monster, vote third party. What is that going to accomplish? This is why Donald Trump is in office, because people didn't like Hillary. I know she's not perfect either. We're not going to have a perfect candidate this year. Green Party people, third party voters, let's try to do it for the next election. We can't do it in 30 days. Let's try to all band together as liberal-minded people to vote Donald Trump out of office. That is what needs to happen for the good of the world. I had to get that off my chest. I cannot see another post telling people to go vote third party. I just can't. I don't have the patience for it anymore. I
won't talk about that now. We'll discuss it later because there's a whole thing going on there. But yeah.
It's just like 30 days before the election is not the time to dissuade your friends not to vote.
It is not.
Anyway, we are live right now, and I don't know if there's any live listeners that are going to be having comments about that, but David will be monitoring them, and we're happy to answer them, especially when Jane comes on. If you do have a question you want to ask Jane, we will be able to do that. That's why we're live.
100.
So, moving forward, our gold star this week is Claudia Conway. Congratulations.
Wait. Claudia M. Conway on TikTok. You have to go on. She is Kellyanne Conway's daughter, and she has called her mother out for being a liar. I didn't realize she was 15. I thought she was like 24. She's called her mother out for being a liar, and then on her TikTok, she's like, "My mother is like coughing all over the house. She is so gross." And then later on, you see another TikTok video where she's like, "I am mother, I'm doing it." And then she shows her mother, and her mother's like, "Tell them I didn't lie. I'm doing it right now." And then she types across the screen, "All right, maybe my mother didn't lie." Like, and then she gives you have to see it. The TikTok is amazing. And on her TikTok, she calls Donald Trump a piece of shit and to vote him out. Claudia M. Conway says it. Kellyanne Conway's daughter says that. And she calls out the media. Like, everybody should. That's what people should be doing right now, is following her TikTok, because it's amazing.
That is impressive. And I know her husband as well is not a Republican, is very Democratic, is very anti-Trump. I don't know how she lives in that household.
No, totally. Her daughter, you will never get your comeuppance like you will from your kids. Your kids are going to, if you don't lie, don't be a piece of shit, because your kids will tell you. Unless they're the Trump kids, and there's something wrong with them.
Then they're just out murdering lions.
Yeah, they're ookie cray. Okay.
Oh, man.
Okay.
That was a good one. Okay. We're going to see if we can get Jane Borden, our lovely special guest of honor, on the show now.
Should I bring her into the studio? All right, I'm doing it. Here we go.
Hey.
Oh, hello. Like, hello. Well, she's not here yet. We'll just keep talking until she comes back.
Yeah, absolutely. What are you excited to ask her about, David? How do you become a part of a cult?
Well, why don't you give her intro, Nathan, and then we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Was her image showing up in the green room? Oh, what do we see? We see some action, maybe.
Wait, it's changing. Uh-oh.
David, tell me what you're most excited to talk to Jane about.
Well, she did a piece in Vanity Fair called "What Is It About California and Cults?" And it's true. For some reason, California goes all in on cults, and they always have been doing that. And I want to ask her, my first question is, because I don't know a lot about NXVIM, and I don't know how to pronounce it even, NXVIM, that it's a cult that we've been seeing. Okay. And I want her elevator pitch on it, what it is, and why it's bad.
Let me
just give you a little bit of background bio stuff for her. She contributes regularly to the Washington Post, Vanity Fair, Real Simple, and Southern Living, among other outlets. She's also appeared in the New York Times Magazine, Rolling Stone, Garden and Gun, Modern Bride. Garden and Gun. I want to read
That's awesome.
And others. Her first book is called I Totally Meant to Do That and was published by Crown in March 2011. Vanity Fair called it affectionate, and New York Magazine deemed it lowbrow brilliant. I started it recently. Oh, I see a face.
Uh-oh.
Oh, there's some action.
Oh my gosh. Can you hear
Oh,
me?
we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, Jane.
Welcome behind
Hello.
us. Welcome. Looks like we might be having some technical
Uh-oh.
difficulty.
Maybe we're having some Wi-Fi issues.
Are you okay, Jane? What's going on?
That's okay. Well, she's getting set
Hi.
up.
Oh,
Hi.
hello.
Hi, Jane. Oh no! All right, keep doing her intro, and then maybe by the time you're done, it's like a spell. She'll be ready to go.
Yeah, I wonder if she would do better joining us from her cell phone. I'm going to email her and tell her.
Okay.
Hey, Jane, it may be better.
Oh, here she is.
Cell phone.
Oh, it's frozen again. Well, while you guys are figuring that out, we have a comment from Joe Denoto saying our YouTube live stream is really hard to find and did not appear in the subscription feed. So, Aaron, can you handle that?
At the moment, no.
I think Jeff actually needs to. He can go to our Unimaginary friend page day of and check to see what's posted there. He can go to.
Okie dokie. Uh-oh, Jane is out.
Okay, that's fine.
Wait.
Do we have any other audio?
Here she is. Jane, are you here? Here we go.
Yes.
Oh, are we
Hi,
on
Jane.
Success?
Yay.
I'm on my phone. I had to just get on my phone, but
Perfect.
it's working. Yay. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome. We're so happy to have you.
Bonjour.
Thanks for
Yeah.
having me. I'm happy to be here.
Very cool. So I gave a little bit of your background, kind of your bio that I ripped from your website, which is janeborden.com. People should check it out and learn more about you. I'm trying to think. We met, and I think this is the first time we met. I took a workshop from you at the North Carolina Comedy Arts Festival 5 or 7 years ago or
Yeah.
more. I really don't remember.
I remember. I remember being there.
Yeah.
I remember you.
I don't recall if our paths had crossed before then or not, but because you do a lot of comedy and a lot of improv. Do you do, improv, right? You've done a lot of improv.
Yeah, I have. I don't do it all that much anymore these days. I miss it. It was the best.
Same here. First, I want to thank you for dedicating your book to me. I know it wasn't dedicated to me, but it was dedicated to Nathan. Who's Nathan?
My husband.
Oh, there you go.
Aww.
Yeah,
It's a good name for husbands.
it's a great name. Are you Nathan or Nathaniel?
I am a Nathan. Yeah. Is he as well? Is he a Nathaniel?
He's a Nathaniel.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh.
I think my parents got cold feet on the long name, especially tacking it onto Edmondson. It's a lot and in and of itself. So.
Right. And like they were protecting you from just immediately seeming like the biggest wasp.
Exactly. Yes. So you recently wrote this article for Vanity Fair about cults in California. What was that? So how does that work? Do you pitch ideas to outlets like that, or do they reach out to you for?
It's both. I mean, it's a little bit of both. For this piece, actually, one of my editors there reached out to me in 2018 when Raniere and Allison Mack were first arrested. I think they were arrested in 2018. And she was like, I want to do something connected to NXVIM on cults. What can you dig up? And I just started reporting and coming up with ideas. And then the article wound up kind of getting waylaid and then came back, as often happens. But the first person I interviewed was this guy named Rick Ross, who has a great name. He's an anti-cult activist. There's a handful of them out there. I mean, there are many, but there's a handful of really well-known ones. And one of the things he said in our conversation is, I was asking him about, you know, the things we suppose we know about cults. They aren't, I won't call them all myths because some of them were true, but we were talking about California as cult country, and he was like, no, you know, cults are everywhere. And that just really stuck with me. And so then I started reporting on that more once the story came back, and that's how we ended up. That's the direction we went in.
Okay. Just real quick before we dive into all the cult stuff, how did the writing thing start for you? What was where did it start, and how did it launch for you?
I started doing improv really before I was writing. I mean, you know, outside of like college, and I really enjoyed writing sketch and writing jokes, and just kept following that, and wound up writing longer form pieces of narrative nonfiction stories. And then I got a job at Time Out magazine, back when people read print magazines. And that just became my path. It just became clear that that was my path. And now I do a combination of journalism and creative nonfiction and ghostwriting.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? I'm a writer. I'm a self-published writer, and I have yet to be a published by someone else writer. But I've been submitting all that. How did you get a book? Like, how did you get a book deal?
Well, I had a couple of pieces published that I had a piece in the New York Times Magazine, and a couple of other clips. And because of that, I was able to get meetings with agents. I mean, that's, you know, it's all about clips and credits or buzz. I mean, today it would be all about social media followers. You have a podcast, that helps.
Does it?
No. I can't say I've read about 3 chapters of your book so far. I picked it up today because I was like, why didn't I read the book? And I've been really enjoying it. It's really cracking me up. So I highly recommend everyone check it out.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Were you actually a secret shopper? Or was that all fiction? So you were. Okay, cool.
Yeah, for a couple of years. It's a job you can't do forever because you're not supposed to be recognized.
Yeah, it was a really great intro to the book. It was really fun. I like how you set up everyone's personal journey motif, and it doesn't reflect anyone else's. So very cool.
But yeah, I mean, David, just keep. I mean, do you know what you want to write about?
I've been writing. I've published 4 books now, and I'm working on my 5th, and I'm working on a TV show with people, and I know exactly. I have like 20 books outlined, ready to go, like for the next book and the next book and the next book.
David, you should share with her the name of your latest book that you're working on.
Well, it's a geopolitical compendium. A lot of people think the name is a little dry, but it encompasses the human experience, and it's called Lesbian, Slut, Gangbang. And it's about, you know, it encapsulates the human experience, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sounds like an exploitation film from the 70s.
Ooh, which I like, but yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
All right, David, did you have some questions for us?
Yes, I was going to ask you because I don't know a lot about, and I don't even know how to pronounce it. You said NXVIM.
NXVIM.
Yeah, I didn't know a lot about it. Can you give us your elevator pitch on what it is?
Yeah, I mean, it's what some people would call a therapy cult, I guess, or like a self-improvement cult. They obviously wouldn't have called it a cult, but it was all about how to evolve psychologically, to overcome the ways you kind of get in your own way. I mean, all of the ideas and the things that people worked on in the workshops were great and super helpful and effective. I mean, that's why the group grew and pulled in followers. And I think that's often the case with these kind of groups. I mean, every documentary you've seen, the first act, you're like, I want to join. You know what I mean? Like they're selling something you want to buy, or they wouldn't be around. But it was a lot of like working with a coach to help you see, limiting beliefs and all that sort of stuff. And the people who rose up in the ranks, such as the Bronfman sisters, who gave millions and millions of dollars, really believed that if they could spread this around the world, that they were improving people's lives and they were making the world a better place, and they were teaching people how to think collectively and about community instead of about power, which is ironic because that's all it was ultimately about with Keith Raniere. But that's, and the Bronfman sisters still believe in it. But at a certain point, once you've invested that much of your life, you have to believe it, or else you can't live with yourself. But
is this cult still going on?
Not really, no. There are still believers. Keith still has followers who think that he's been wrongfully arrested. I don't think he's actually gone to trial yet.
Has Allison gone to trial yet? Has she been sentenced?
I think she has. I think she's been sentenced. Someone fact check me on that, but
I'm not sure.
He is in jail, and outside of the jail, people gather once a week to dance, and it's called K-Rose, Kayrose, I think, which is like clearly his initials, Keith Raniere. And it's some of the people supposedly from NXVIM who are in Albany. Most of the people in the organization weren't living in and around his home in Albany, but those who, really were really in deep had moved there, and that's where he's in prison.
Cool. And then he and the other woman, they were arrested for sex trafficking, correct?
Among other things, yeah.
Wow.
Because of the, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Finish your thought, please.
Well, because of the branding, because of the DOS, the group of slaves, who really, it was about grooming women to come have sex with Keith. And so that's why it was considered sex trafficking. But on the surface, it was just another program within the many programs NXVIM offered, wherein it was only women, and they were master-slave relationships, and it was supposed to be super feminist. When you hear the whole pitch, you hear nuggets in it where you're like, oh, interesting. Yeah, okay, I can see how that's, whatever. But ultimately, they were just bringing in girls to bang Keith.
That's what it always boils down to. Every advancement in human technology is always just to bang somebody.
So you were talking about the main motive being power, and I know that that's the case in majority, if not all, of cults. There's also a financial or profit aspect to it as well. Was that part of this particular cult? Were people making money?
Yeah. I think Keith Raniere had like $8 million in one of his accounts. I don't know how much else was going around. But yes, money is usually the first and foremost goal. People get really, really rich. Scientology has like billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah, I was going to say they haven't reached that level yet, have they? The next,
When that hasn't hit official religion status, are you exempt from taxes still, or how does that work? You fly under the radar?
You're not exempt from taxes unless you get religious status. I find that interesting because so many of these groups are not religious anymore. a lot of modern day destructive groups. People don't like to use the word cult because it's kind of a word without meaning at this point. It gets tossed around so much. Rick Ross uses the phrase destructive cults, which I find useful. But at any rate, destructive groups these days are often not religious. There's no higher power. There's no superpower, right? Which is the definition of a new religious movement. They are self-help groups very often, like NXVIM was. Some multi-level marketing businesses are very cult-like, can meet the criteria, the definition of a destructive group. And I find that interesting because they could make a lot more money if they did seek tax exempt status. But I think that's just a sign of the times. Of America is so much more secular than it was in the 60s and 70s, which was probably, it's considered at least to be the heyday of cults. And almost all of those were religious in nature. So, but yes, you can save a lot of money if you throw in a higher power.
So I guess Keith didn't consider himself a deity of any sort. Just a sex god.
I bet he did. I bet he threw the words in there somewhere, right?
Well, he went by the name Vanguard, and he was certainly worshipped by any definition that you could find. He was worshipped. Did he explicitly say he was like the son of God or something? No, but he was very clearly worshipped, and that was the intention. There was a week-long celebration of his birthday called Vanguard Week. So yeah, you can have, I guess, without.
Yeah,
Sounds
it's
awesome.
like they're building up to it. Like they're really like building up to making it a religion at some point. Maybe after he dies, like that would be the perfect time for something like that.
Well, that's a really interesting aspect of these groups to me, and I'm developing a book pitch right now, and this is one of the things I'm looking into. Is like, what is the moment where the con man starts to believe his own con? Because these groups follow a trajectory, right? It starts out as a financial con, and then the sex starts, and then the paranoia comes. Outside people are out to get us, stockpiling weapons and all that, and then at some point in there, they start to think they're God. The con man starts to believe in his divinity, and that's super fascinating to me. That, I mean, it's corruption of power, right? You know, these guys start out smarmy, of course, but they don't start out like when Jim Jones started out, he did not have good intentions, but still, he wasn't planning to like kill what was it, like 1,000 people or something? And yeah, you know, like, so what? How does power do that to us or to men? Power corrupts women, but it's just women don't often find themselves in this position, although they do. Our cults run by women.
But I got to tell you, well, okay, wait, all right, okay, wait, all right, here. All right, I'm not now, but I was raised in it, but I'm not now. I've been declared a suppressive person, but I'm not now. Yeah, I was raised in Scientology, and I got to tell you, yeah, like Dave Miscavige and what's his name, L. Ron Hubbard, they thought of themselves as God, but I got to tell you, women in power and cults, whoosh, like you've like they become the ultimate Karen. Like you can kind of like talk to the men, but with women, they draw the line and that's it. And they will bring out every weapon against you. Like it's bizarre. I don't know what it is, but anyways, I mean, I think it's the personality that's drawn to it. But yeah. But anyway, go ahead.
No, I think power affects men and women differently. I'm not sure that that's because of anything distinct in our gender. This is something else I've done a lot of research in for another story that hasn't panned out yet for a different magazine, but that might come back, about how power affects women. And the sort of academic answer or consensus seems to be at this point that women respond to power differently not because of their chromosomes, but because of their history as an oppressed group.
100%.
So which doesn't mean they're any more or less corrupted by it. It's just kind of a different process. But there certainly have been female cult leaders or even second in command, as was the case with the Rajneeshis in Oregon, right? She was the one executing most of the hanky-panky, even though the Bhagwan was the divine leader. You should watch Wild Wild Country if you haven't. It's great.
Is that a film or is that a series? Is that a film or a series?
It's a series. I think it's on Netflix.
Okay.
This also came out in 2018.
Awesome.
What are the top current cults that you're aware of that we should be hesitant of?
What are the top 10 cults right now? Go.
That's a tough question. Honestly, I don't know. And the reason why is because most of my research has been into past groups.
Okay.
Also, no one wants to get
on their hit list.
But I can tell you that a lot of groups that you thought were gone are actually still around. Like the Moonies.
Oh.
They're still around.
Wow. Where are they? Because didn't a lot of them got married and then a lot of them killed themselves, right?
Let me see if I can. Give me a second. I'm pulling up my notes.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No. I have my notes with me all the time.
My next question is going to be why California?
Oh.
Not now, but
well, she talks about it in the article, but yeah, go ahead, Jane.
This question is for our listeners, David.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Read the article, listener. Sorry, go
ahead. So why California? The answer in a word is recruiting. So these groups need a lot of members to sustain themselves, not only because it's about taking people's money, but also because most people leave cults far and away. Like 95% is a statistic that was tossed at me during my research of people do not stick around. And most people leave within like a week. And even if not, they're gone within 2 years. So it's a really, really small percentage of people who will totally give over their lives and their fortunes. So in order to get enough people who stick around to make you rich, you got to cast a really wide net. So the recruitment is constant. And if you were in Scientology, David, I'm sure you know
that. Yeah, they would lock you in a room. We've all been locked in a room, but yeah, go ahead.
Wow, I want to hear more about. All right, let me finish this quickly so we can.
All right, go ahead. Sorry.
So California traditionally did not have a lot of religion in it. When all of the major churches came over from Western Europe, when America was being settled by white people, they basically set up on the East Coast and they didn't really move much farther than the Mississippi. So California has traditionally been what they call unchurched. So what that just means is that people didn't have communities. And most people in California were migrants. They had moved here recently, back in the day. I mean, still today, it's a lot of transitional people. So that meant that you were just more vulnerable to being recruited. There's not a profile of a cult member. There is no demographic. There is no psychological, profile of a cult member. It can literally happen to anyone. It has happened to anyone and everyone. The commonality seems to be that these people are captured at a moment of vulnerability. So cults recruit on college campuses, for example, because this is a moment where your life is changing a lot for the first time in many cases, and you're away from your community and support system. So you might be looking for a community or a support system. So in California, what happened is a lot of new religious movements started. A lot of people experimenting with experiential ways to be spiritual, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of con men thought, oh, okay, well, I can do that too, and I can just take advantage of people because people out there are already open to new religious movements because they're unchurched. So that's a lot of how so many of these groups exploded in the 60s and 70s in California. And then that's part one. Part two is that these groups always open a branch in a major city. They're after money, they're after people. You go to cities, right? So they're always going to open, once they get big, they open a branch in Miami. They open a branch in San Francisco. San Francisco is where the money is. There's still so many groups up there looking for Silicon Valley money. And they open a branch in Los Angeles, almost always. A lot of groups that started somewhere else wound up in Los Angeles, at the moment where they got super destructive, sort of just by circumstance. And then that's part two. And then the third part is Hollywood, right? You want to get people, you want to pull in a lot of people, you need celebrities. And then also a lot of these leaders want to be celebrities. Keith Raniere pulled in a filmmaker because he wanted to not only have a bunch of footage of everything he was doing to show the world, but he literally wanted to be in a movie. Like they wrote it was fiction, like a narrative film, and he was going to be the star. And I want to see that footage so badly, except it's so cringeworthy. But the reason why The Vow, the HBO documentary, has so much footage is because he pulled in this guy to shoot everything. I mean, he was the architect of his own downfall.
I think I've never heard the word unchurched before. I think that's so interesting.
Yeah.
I never would have thought that. We spent 8 years living in LA, and we visited a number of the Christian missionaries up the coast. So it always felt like a religious place. I know there's a lot of the influence in Latin America comes across as well, and they're very religious down there overall.
Yes. The missions are certainly an exception.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating though. Really.
Can I comment on what you said? I don't know about a lot of the other cults, but I definitely the commonality that I saw in Scientology is every single person I came across that was a devout Scientologist, including when I would believe, like I didn't believe straight through, but there were times, and there was vulnerable times when I believed. There's a desperation, and I think all humans have a desperation, but with Scientology, Scientologists, there's a desperation that burns brighter, and there's something they need so desperately that Scientology will answer it. Scientology is the only answer. And I think that's why California becomes such a huge place, is because people come out here in droves, desperate to be famous, desperate to make it. Like this is their hopes and dreams. And I think that's why. And I knew so many actors that would come into the church being like, I need to be a Scientologist because I want to be a Tom Cruise. I want to be the next this. And I don't know about the other cults, but I think that's the commonality of Scientology.
Yeah, for sure. I think, first of all, there's an argument to be made that struggling actors are vulnerable in life and unmoored in ways that perhaps other people in their 20s are not. And then, for sure, when you dangle this carrot, which Scientology did very effectively.
I think the most effective, but
it sounds like Scientology really nailed that with the getting the celebrity, like the cultural impact that they've been able to have that with Tom Cruise and John Travolta, and just myself when we moved to LA. I think I happened to submit to something that they had posted, like an in-house video, and it was the only time in all the casting that I had sent out to where they called me and said that they not only did they want me to audition, that I had the part, they loved what I did, they thought I was great. And when I started having second doubts, and I called them the night before the shoot and was like, I think I'm going to pass on this, they offered to change the shoot date.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. We're getting a little behind on the audience questions. We had one question from Mary Shelby that was wondering if the KKK is considered a cult, and if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I actually just pulled a book off my shelf to read to try to answer that question.
Thank you.
It's called. I mean, I don't know the answer yet, but I can tell you a little bit of what I think. But this book, The Second Coming of the KKK, is about all the influence they had in the 1920s. And I think what makes it so hard to define a cult is that the Venn diagram of groups that are cult-like is endless. Like at one end of the spectrum, you can say that every cult is domestic abuse. They're domestic abusers, right? At the other end, you could say it's capitalism, right? Just leaders are following their self-interest, and they're convincing people who join the group to serve the leader's self-interest instead of their own self-interest, which is just marketing 101, right? That's just PR. So it's very hard to define for that reason. The definition that Rick Ross uses is there's a leader who's worshipped. There are some sort of persuasion, mind control techniques in play, and actual harm is being done. So with the KKK, I think you could certainly say that criteria 2 and 3 apply. Is there a leader being worshipped? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that yet. I don't know what the structure is like. Are there rules that say that like you can only be Grand Wizard for so long before someone else comes along? I mean, that's slightly more democratic. So
I almost feel like white culture is the substitute for that. Just white, that's my guess.
White culture is the substitute for what?
Like a leader. It's like the idea of whiteness being superior.
Worshipping whiteness. That's interesting.
That's why I sarcastically said, well, not totally, partially sarcastically said Donald Trump in the middle of that, because he represents that for so many people.
Yeah, well, there's a book out right now by a guy, Lassen. I forget his first name. He's another well-known anti-cult activist about Trumpism as a cult.
Wow. Yeah.
Totally. I wanted to get into that because when you have a Trump supporter, like we're all white, I think we all have Trump supporters in our family, right? That say bizarre things. And when you talk to them, it's like talking to a cult member. They have the same thing where they just throw away evidence. Or if you have something to prove them wrong, they're just like, scientists don't know. The media doesn't know. They all have an agenda. Trump is the real answer. And they're saying it just like a cult member.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, probably the biggest overlap, well, besides domestic abuse, with cults is autocracy,
We do have a question from Joe Donato here, wondering if the difference between a cult and a religion is retention. And he added that he's not asking that sarcastically.
There's not a lot of difference between a cult and a religion, especially, I mean, there is obviously, but when you're talking about words and definitions, it gets a lot muddier. The definition of a religion is just, is there a higher power? Is there a belief in a spiritual, supernatural power? I think what turns a cult into a religion instead of a destructive group is when the power structure is more democratic, and when the leader of the church is not being worshipped him or herself. But, one of the most famous lines you'll hear cult experts and new religious movement academics say is Christianity was a cult. Every religion starts out as a cult because a cult is just a relatively new group that's disliked by the establishment.
But it's also the way the members were treated. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, I'm sure David agrees with that. We talk about Christianity a lot.
Well, because I know a little bit about when the formation of it, and the members are treated the same as in a cult. Like you have rules, and if you disobey the rules, you're punished severely. And that's the way Christianity started out, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's destructive or not, if it's not the main, I mean, every sect in American history has been called a cult. Communes, whether they were hurting their members or not, were considered cults.
Oh.
And then you could also look at the Christian church and say, well, who's executed more sex abuse than the Catholics? And who's committed more financial fraud than Jim Baker? So it's really muddy. It's really muddy. To me, the differences are the members of the religion working toward their self-interest, meaning growing personal growth and doing good for the world, which is what most churches do, through tithing and volunteering. Or are they working toward the self-interest of a con man who's taking advantage of them? And I think often that, like I said, it has to do with democratic structure, because even if you have a con man in charge, if you remove him at some point and put someone else in charge, then the group remains. The group lives on. The group is not bound to the person.
Like Scientology, yeah. They just go on to a new one. Yeah. I agree with you.
So I want to be mindful of your time, Jane. We have about 10 minutes with you. So David, do you have any burning questions? Or Jane, is there something that you would like to touch on that we haven't reached yet?
I would like to hear about being locked in a room. I mean,
you've never been locked in a room before?
It's classic tactic, P.S., being locked in a room. Classic tactic. But like, I also want to be sensitive. Your readers may have heard all of these stories before, but
I heard that one in
I
a
don't
while.
think I've heard that.
Really? Well, it's funny because my experiences aren't anywhere near as dramatic as most people. Because I always kind of took it with a grain of salt, and I always kind of would laugh about it and stuff. Because I remember once I was locked in a room, and like 5 members stood in front of the door because they were trying to get me to sign up to be a course supervisor, which you don't get paid. You give your time, and you have to commit to 40 hours a week on top of your time. I know. I was like, I can't do it. I have a company. I was building a company at the time. So I remember just laughing and saying, okay, and signing it. And then I just didn't show up for orientation or anything and just didn't do it because they literally locked me in a room. And it's sad because I know they sound horrible, but that was all done to them, and they all had their own jobs, and they all had to find someone to help them, ease their burden. They should have found someone better than me. But yeah, like that's the way the church treats people. So they treat everybody like that. And that's such a common thing. And I told somebody about it, and they were just like, oh yeah. Like what's the big deal? Like, yeah, of course.
That slightly reminds me of a theater company that tried to get me to work for them for like 25 hours a week for free.
And they locked you in a room?
There was no locking in a room, but there was, I think, some psychological abuse going on.
David, did they lock you in the room to try to get you to say yes? Was that what was
happy to sign it? Yeah, they put the papers in front of me, and they're like, sign the contract. We need you. We need you.
And you couldn't leave until you signed it? Was that what happened?
Right. And I could have busted out, and I could have easily manhandled my way out with the people that were there, but I just didn't. I should have done that next time.
No one does. No one would do that. They were your friends.
Yeah, they were my friends for sure. But like I knew a guy who was married to one of L. Ron Hubbard's daughters, and he was one of the high executives. And David Miscavige came into town. He was called into a room. David Miscavige came into the room, locked it behind him. His 2 bodyguards came in, held the guy down, and David Miscavige punched him in the face and told him, you are the worst. Like, you have ruined. Like, so I didn't get that. I knew people that got that kind of treatment. That would happen regularly where people would be beaten in locked rooms because of their bad performance as an executive. So yeah.
David, have you been sued?
No, I have not been sued.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet, but they have their hands full right now. I don't know if you know. Do you know anything about Danny Masterson's rape charges?
Is there more news? What's going on?
Well, he went into court today with a demurrer saying that it's a media stunt and that because they have all done Scientology courses at some time or another, all the accusers, that they are bound to religious arbitration, which is done within the church. So he wants the rape victims, which is not funny, it's sick and sad, to now be bound to this religious arbitration. I've done that religious arbitration. People are not trained, they don't know what they're talking about, and they just try to make you give money to the church. Like, the solution is, okay, you guys, I know you have a conflict, you just both need to give money to the church and just get rid of your conflict, and that's it. That's the way everything is solved.
Jeez.
And it's really sad because I know one of the girls, and I talked to her, and I absolutely believe that it happened.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, because I knew Danny Masterson too, so it was kind of like but I mean, yeah, like when you read about it, but then hearing her version, and not only that, it's all the people that I knew, because I knew all of his friends and were my friends too, and the way they closed ranks around him, and this girl was everyone's friend. They just, dismissed her, and it's so vile. And some of the other celebrities were part of that too. Like Juliette Lewis was one of the people that turned their back on her. Anyway, so it's, yeah.
With the remaining few minutes, David, if you want to double check any audience questions, and Jane, for you, do you want to talk about a little bit what's next on your agenda, what your next project is that you're passionate about, and then also where people can follow you and find you?
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm on Instagram at Jane Borden, and I think it's the same on Twitter, although I don't tweet very much. And I'm really passionate about this topic. Like I said, I'm developing a book pitch right now with my agent, just focusing on that moment. Like, when does a group become a cult? When does a healthy group become destructive? And what sort of overlaps can that tell us about other things that might be going on in America right now, where people are believing things that aren't true, that lead them to act in ways against their self-interest?
Totally.
Really curious. So what is it about us that we're so susceptible to it?
I think that it's very Joe Donato, to answer your question. I think that's also accurate.
Just for our listeners that aren't watching, he said, I've heard it said that a cult is an unpopular religion and a religion is a popular cult.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's certainly one way to look at it. I think that human beings are seekers by nature. I think we seek higher powers. I think we want to believe in that there is a design and that there is a path, because we have a lot of natural anxiety. And what I'm saying isn't new. This is all religious academic work. I think one of the, in addition to seeking a higher power, I think we seek community and we seek each other. And I think often those are the same thing. A lot of Eastern spirituality talks about the divine is within us. Divine is within everything. So I think seekership is often really just about community. And therefore, when you're joining a group, it might be because you believe in what the con man is selling, or you just want community. We want to be with each other. And I think we tend to victim blame cult members in a way that's really unfair, because it literally could happen to anyone. But I think that the problem is also the answer in a way, because if what we're seeking is community, community is the solution, right? The problem is a dictator. So the answer is to shift power. Everyone gets a turn.
And would that be an answer to Chris's question here? There will always be cults and religious extremism in this country. How do we learn to live with them? I think this will be our last question for Jane.
Live with them. I mean, it depends on if they're being destructive. If they're being destructive, we can't live with them. I think that critical thinking needs to be taught in schools. I mean, I remember in grade school taking class about advertising. Like, what's the difference between an advertisement and an article? And that was news to me as a kid. I didn't know there was a distinction. I mean, we really have to be taught these things. And I think if we want to stop cults, then we don't wait until they rape and murder. I think we set up structures that keep them from becoming destructive. And I think that has to do with limiting power. And I think that has to do with, you know, maybe we say you're not allowed to have people work for free, you know, like set up laws that stop them at the beginning before they become impossible to thwart without FBI firepower.
I agree 100%.
This has been so great. I know we're out of time. I feel like we could talk to you for a while longer, but thank you for giving up.
Totally.
For us.
Oh, it wasn't giving up. This was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been great.
I know. I would love you to come back. And if you need help on that book, reach out to me. I'll help you with anything.
I will.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to have you back on. So anytime in the future where there's something that you want to promote, let us know.
Oh, thanks.
Or anything. If you want to talk about Scientology or whatever, they're always doing something wacky.
And everyone should feel free to buy my first book. It doesn't have anything to do with cults, but it's really fun.
Yeah, it's really good so far.
No, totally.
Give the name and where to find it.
It's called I Totally Meant to Do That. And it's, you know, everywhere.
All the places.
Aw, thanks.
Yeah, do you go to janeborden.com and you can bounce around from there.
Yeah. Thanks, audience, for your interesting questions. That's so thoughtful. And I appreciate being here talking with you all.
Thank you so much, Jane.
Have a great evening.
You too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right.
She was awesome. I can't wait to have her back. We do have a question that I think I can answer if you guys are ready for this shit.
Do so.
Nancy Edmondson, was Est a cult? Yes, Est was a cult, and it was started, at least in Scientology, we were told it was started by people that came to Scientology, learned Scientology, and then started Est. And they had constantly had lawsuits back and forth, Scientology and Est.
I'm not familiar with Est.
Est
started in Southern California, I believe. And it kind of started as like a self-help sort of thing as well. I've encountered a number of different outgrowths of Est because there's, you know, it's split and different people went and did different things. And I think in general, it's mainly kind of dead at this point, but I think we actually went to a workshop that was kind of an outgrowth of it. Do you remember going to that one in, I think it was Santa Monica at the Circle Church or whatever it was called?
No.
Okay. We were, yeah. So like, anyway, there's lots of organizations that have kind of, or individuals that have kind of started workshops as a result of that, I think so.
Nancy Edmondson says, why?
Ooh, that's deep.
Well, thank you, Joji Notro. Sorry.
Interesting podcast. Well, we really appreciate the people asking questions and engaging because that's what makes live streams fun.
Totally. I know. I love our listeners. They're wonderful people.
Nancy says that a friend took classes with Est. I knew someone who, there's like a pretty strong organization in Philadelphia, actually, that is an outgrowth from it that still exists to this day. Yeah, so it does still exist in certain forms.
Cool. So what is the next cult we're going to join?
Yes. Wait, is the Unimaginary Friend community a cult?
Are we
Well, one of us has to be more of a dangerous dictator.
Nathan, you want that role?
I have the mask on right now, so maybe I'm properly cast for that with this look.
I feel like you'd be good at it, Nathan.
It's too responsible wearing a mask right now. You gotta
Trying
throw
to
caution
be.
to the wind.
Even though it's just a cold, I don't want to get Aaron sick.
The baby.
He all cares
Yeah,
about me.
because there's a
Shit.
Little Glumthelklitch.
That is our child's official nickname at this point.
Yes.
Her official name. Wait, yeah. Do we have any more suggestions from our listeners? Any names?
So I think we can
Great.
tackle that on the next episode in 2 weeks. So
Okay.
anybody that wants to throw some names in the hat. I'm going to be having an anatomy scan next week, which is basically an hour-long ultrasound where they like look at every single crack and crevice of my womb and what's inside. So we'll have a pretty good idea of what she looks like.
So you have to lay there like an idiot for an hour?
Yes. Aww.
They actually yell at
that's
you if you're not being idiotic enough. Be more idiotic.
Wait, I want to ask, like, since we didn't get a lot of time, but I would love to talk to her for so much longer. She was such a great guest. Do our guests right now, do you have any questions for me as an ex-cult member? We want to fulfill your cult appetite. If anyone has a question or comment about cults. Well, yeah, I want to know. I have a question for Aaron and Nathan. And especially Nathan, now that you're a new cult leader. Did you guys ever think, God, David's so stupid. Why did you join a cult? Or like, what is wrong with David? Or like, did you ever think like, oh, now I'm seeing David's behavior, why he became a cult member and what is wrong with him? Like, did any of those thoughts ever come across?
No, you were pretty clear that it was something you did because your family was a part of it and that you weren't choosing it for yourself at the beginning. So, I mean, I never really even thought about it because it was just, it's like you said, it's something you were kind of born into. And when you came to the point where you had some self-awareness and reason going on in your head, you got out. So I don't have any judgment or anything towards you for that.
What about you, Nathan?
I mean, I think I've seen growing up in a church and seeing other denominations and how they affected individuals. I've seen the dynamics at play for a long time. So I just like that Jane pointed out that there's no individual, like we victim blame a lot. We blame the individuals who join for being, weak-minded or whatever you want to label them as. And there is that tendency. I see that tendency and see people do that, but it's really not true. I mean, everyone is looking for that community or answer. And when you are vulnerable, if someone provides that for you and also provides something that's kind of useful, it's easy to fall into those traps, I think. I mean, when I was in London, I had an individual stop me on the street and say, "Excuse me, sir." And I was like, "Yes." "What's your biggest aspiration," or something like that? "What's your lifelong dream?" I think was the question. And I was so struck by that question, because it was so deep. And so someone just asked you that on the street. I was immediately intrigued. It ended up being someone trying to sign me up for Scientology. So I think it's, but in your case, David, I definitely thought, oh, he's so weak-minded. It's obvious.
I do want to say we had a comment from a listener who was commenting that she liked David's shirt.
Oh yeah, Mary Shelby, my cockroach shirt.
Human beings are like cockroaches on God's heavenly kitchen floor fighting over a lima bean. That's something that David's been saying since we started in 2015.
Thank you. I work for our cults thing. And then now
on your website, right? This shirt?
Yeah, you can sell if you go to davidmonster.com. And cbactortraveler.com writes, David, has being a cult member made you a less trusting person? Yes and no. It didn't. I am ashamed to say. One thing I want to say, I want to answer this a little bit with what Nathan said. It's funny because they say that there's no, we victim shame and all that stuff. But the one thing that's common with everybody that I know that left Scientology, when we get together and talk, we do experience shame and embarrassment and we cringe at the things that we did believe or the actions we took. I want to say that now I'm a less trusting person than I've ever have been before. And I want to say that I'm ashamed to say that I wasn't, like when I left Scientology, I wasn't as mistrusting as I should have been. Like it took a while because you're still kind of like reconciling it. It's like with my parents. Like I always thought, like when you have parents that are horrible, you always think they're going to be nice one day, like an idiot. You're like an abused dog. You keep going back and it takes you a while. Like I think that is part of the cult. There is a cult profile where like you have the beaten dog syndrome, because I see it in the Catholic Church and I see it with Christians and I see it with cult members. that it doesn't click. Things don't click right away that, oh, this person's never going to be nice to me. So it took me a long time. Now I'm the least trusting person I've ever been from being around humans. Like humans have made me that way. But I think there is a component of that where I see bullshit. Because I've seen total sociopaths up close. Like I've seen the Hillary Clintons and the Donald Trumps like face to face, where a lot of people are like, what? Like everybody's normal. Everybody's a human being, David. And it's not true. Like there are people that are serious sociopaths that will use you. Yeah. So did that answer the question at all?
Sure.
I'll say yes.
CB Actor Trevor also asks, Nathan and Aaron are very liberal, yet come from conservative areas. Has your upbringing shaped your current views and ideals, Nathan and Aaron?
It's a good question. I wonder if you heard my public service announcement at the beginning. Honestly, I mean, I'll just speak for myself right now. Whether I think my mom's listening, so she could weigh in if she wants, but I thought my parents did a good job, whether they wanted to or not, of just keeping politics out of our house. Even though my parents have very different political views, I didn't hear about that stuff. So I felt like I was I wasn't aware, and maybe I should have been, but I wasn't. So I feel like I didn't really start to get involved or learn about politics until I moved, and I was kind of out in the world on my own, which is when I moved to Philadelphia, which is a pretty liberal place. So I don't feel like I was surrounded by a lot of conservative ideals, even though I'm sure I was, but no one was imposing them on me. So I do notice when I go back to that area now, like just all the Trump signs everywhere. So I know that area is just infiltrated with that kind of mindset. But it didn't really shape me that I know of.
Yeah, so I grew up in a household that was one conservative and one liberal person. So I was influenced by both. And I don't want to reduce the area that I grew up in to certain very obviously conservative things, because there's, obviously great people there. My father, who's very conservative, he's one of the kindest, most loving people I've ever met in my life. So there's a lot of contradictions that exist in that, but I can say that I just had certainly my mother's son, and I had a disposition that was more liberal or more open-minded and accepting. And I did feel constrained in the area that I grew up in, to the point where when I would meet people who were more of like mine and be like, oh, where did this rare gem come from? Again, I don't want to reduce it to like, oh, the conservatives were all bigoted or all, like racist, although those things existed in heaping mounds. So, yeah, I mean, it all shaped it. I think if anything, one thing that it shaped for me was to see the humanity in both sides in a way that people from certain areas that aren't exposed to both can't. When I moved to LA, it was the first time I had met people who did not know anyone who would vote for Trump in their mind. So they just were so not exposed to conservatives at all. So yeah, I would say that's the big influence there.
And that's such a good point. And I can expand on that a little bit, but people that grow up in really liberal bubbles that have never either experienced life in a conservative place or never met people or hung out with people that think like that, this is where bigotry comes from. It's just not being exposed to people that are different than you, whether they look different or they think differently. And so I feel like I have gratitude for my connection to rural America and to my life in big cities in this country, because I feel like my mind is open in a way that it wouldn't be otherwise, that I know people that I love and respect on both sides, and I try to hear them. I don't always do that effectively, but I do try. It's just like, but I see like the people that in the area that I grew up in, if they've never left, it's the same thing, that if you are born and raised in a liberal area, like they've never met a liberal, or they've never met someone from Latin America and they are an immigrant and that's why they're vilified, or they're not around Black people, and like it's fear and just a not understanding people that are different. So if you ever, if you just need to get out of your own space.
Your own space. We're all three have been raised by a Trump voter. All three of us. Can you guys see, like, it's funny because I never thought of it before, but I think you guys know what it's like to talk to a cult member, because when you talk to a Trump person, like, evidence does not sway them at all. Do you guys see that, and how has that affected you now that you know? Go.
I've seen it, and it's frustrating. I don't know what else to say, really. I mean, I think Donald Trump's part of my public service announcement in the beginning of the episode was Donald Trump is, I don't know, largely or partially responsible for creating this world in which no one believes fact. They don't believe respectable outlets. They don't believe journalists. They don't believe scientists. He's cast doubt upon all of his followers. So it doesn't matter what you say. There's just doubt on everything. And I feel it too. Like, every time I hear anything, I doubt it. Like, did Trump even have COVID-19? Like, maybe it could be a lie. You know, there's like it's this weird, bizarre post-truth world we live in. I don't even know how to really survive it. I'm still figuring it out.
Go ahead, Nathan. Sorry.
What was the question?
that Trump, like, do you see how Trump supporters are kind of like cult members, where they just dismiss evidence?
They have a different set of facts being given to them from different outlets, so they're in their bubble again. Again, it's a lack of exposure to other things, and I think this all really ties to our comfort with tribalism, like wanting to be in an in-group, and you define that by pitting yourself against other groups. And the conservatives just have, like, certain talking points have become priority in a way that it isn't priority for liberals, and then there are the ones that are obviously pitted against each other. So it's just like the emphasis in that world, that bubble, is just so different. The fear mongering but one thing I've noticed, at least with some of the conservatives I've seen, they can out-talk and seem to be more educated often about specific details. I think the one thing that the right does very well is their messaging is so clear that across the board you're hearing the same pinpointed facts or pinpointed talking points. And since they're reiterated so much, they just get embedded in their heads. Ooh. So it's hard to contradict that. Or one message that I've seen going around is like, here's the 500 things that Trump has done that are good and why he should be voted for. I was going through the list just like expecting as a liberal to be like, wrong, 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 wrong. There's no context provided. So it'd be like, Trump passed this bill. And it's like, okay, that bill was passed. What does that bill even mean? What does it even do? It says environment in the name, but what did it actually do? So you can create lists of information that seems really great. And there's probably things in there that are great, or things that just happen in government that he really has no responsibility for. So again, it's like, then you miss nuance, and no one has time for that anymore.
I feel like this is a good bookend. I'm going to keep going back to my PSA, but like something that it sparked when Nathan mentioned is like, one thing that conservatives are really good at are uniting their party, like, no matter what. Like, everyone hated Donald Trump at first, and now they're all united under his insanity. And that's one thing liberals can't do, and that's why we keep losing. So we need to unite for November 3rd.
Totally.
All of us, even if we're not excited about it, we have to, because we can't have 4 years. We can't.
The last thing I want to say is that I think a lot of people overlook how much we're biologically predisposed to fall into one of those camps. Like, our psychology, actually, you can predict who is going to be a Republican or a conservative or a liberal based on innate behaviors and mind shit. So that's something we often overlook too.
Totally. I want to say that I want to go back because you guys reminded me of something that Chris asked about. Has it changed me? And one of the things it has changed me on is I do deep dives on things. Like when I hear something, I'll go look and be like, yeah, what is the origination of this? Why? That's why I'm so against Hillary Clinton, because I've done a deep dive on her. And I know some of the stuff she's done. And you know what I mean? Like, I take a look at things. That's why I know about the cops. Like, if I hear something like the cops aren't obligated to protect us, I don't just go like, oh, yeah, and forward the meme. I go and take a look, and it's like, yeah, there is no precedent. Like, they have no job description. So it's like, that is one thing I do. That's why I'm so self-righteous these days, is because before I yell and scream, I take a look. Instead of, I think that's why I hate both parties so much, is because I've really looked at them both, and they both are guilty. I mean, no, not right now. Like the Republicans, I agree, have taken it to this new level of insanity, 100%.
Let's go there on November 4th. Like,
no, totally, I agree with you 100%, and 100%. And we not only need to get rid of,
we're on the same.
And we can't. I do not want that who he put up for the Supreme Court. I don't want her. I don't want Mitch McConnell. I agree. They've taken it to this new level. But yeah, like this is something we should discuss, definitely. But I agree with you. But the thing that's changed me is I just take a deep dive.
That's a nice point that Joe's making, that he has found some gratitude for growing up in a place with a small rural town, because it's helped him to empathize and communicate with people different than him. I thought of this analogy. You know how you guys heard of the analogy of like the blind men around the elephant, and they're all touching the elephant, but one's like, it's a hose, and someone else's, it's a tree trunk, and someone else's, it's a, I don't know what the fuck, a wall. I think that analogy is good, but there's one extra step. Sometimes there are people who are on top of the elephant riding along smoothly, and then there's other people who are feeling the bottom of the freaking hooves or the feet crunching down on them. So it is still just an elephant, but people are being, given different experiences on it.
I think this.
Look what you did there, and it's the GOP. I get it. Girl, you tied that up, Nathan. You go, girl.
I think this comment from my mom is going back to me saying that life wasn't very political when I was growing up, and whether or not I was sheltered from it or not. And she had said that politics was not an issue back then like it is now. So.
And you know why? When it changed, right? We were talking about this recently.
I feel like I don't.
Did I put you on the spot? You said this recently. I'll just when they took that law out. That
I wasn't alive for that, but yeah.
Yeah. I think it was in the 80s, actually. It was a law that basically was like, whenever you reported news, you had to report both sides. And they removed that law, and that's when Rush Limbaugh came to the forefront.
And Fox News was born the next day, practically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan's to thank for that. Thanks.
But also, though, I think she's also saying that, like, never before have our rights been under such blatant attack. Like, I mean, I'm sure behind closed doors they've been under attack, but like, I've never seen it like this. I've never seen people so unashamedly corrupt. Never like this.
Oh, David, I'm having such a hard time not going back to the Hillary Clinton issue.
All right, should we wrap it up? Let's wrap it up.
Let's talk about that then, bitch.
Now, Jane was a great guest. It was great having her on.
Jane was awesome.
Hillary Clinton wouldn't have done the stuff that Donald Trump's done. Okay.
I already said that. I agree that she would have handled the pandemic better, and she would have handled parts of the Black Lives Matter better for sure.
Okay.
For sure. I already said that. I said, yeah.
Right.
I do not think she would be the car wreck that he is. No.
All right.
Okay. It means we got into politics, but we're deep in political season, so we might do this once or twice more before. I think we're gonna talk about the debates coming up. It sounds like Donald's back in business, so we might have some more debates. And we'd love to talk about the first one and the vice presidential one tomorrow. But thank you all so much for tuning in. Please go at Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at Unimaginary Friend to keep us on your radar. We will be back in 2 weeks with another live stream. Please participate. We love having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, you guys. That is so sweet. Thank you so much. Oh, wait. Wait, can you guys vamp for a second?
Jane was a great
All right.
guest.
Jane was amazing. I want to have her back on. She's so great. And she's the kind of speaker that I'd like to be, where it's just smooth and she knows what she's talking about. Thank you, Cross. And thank you, Nancy. Listen, I'm a super nice person. So if I'm a bitch to you, you should ask yourself why, bitch.